Yo, what's checking, everybody? Welcome to a Monday edition of House Divided here on Orange Bloods Live. I'm Jeff Ketchum, and that is Chad Hastings. By the way, have you ever noticed how much of a giant I look like compared to you when you're in the Hall of Helmets? And I don't know, it makes me feel like Jack and the Beanstalk on some level. It's like, are you going to sell me a bag of seeds at some point today? I don't know. Nevertheless, we're going to be with you for the next hour or so. Hit that like button, subscribe to the channel, get notifications, all the things that YouTube people tell you to do with their videos on like an hour by hour basis. Thanks to everybody coming in to the Specs chat. That's right. Smash that like button. Thank you very much, Alan. You've captured the spirit of what we're going for. So look, here's what we did yesterday, or here's what I did yesterday on orangebloods.com. That is going to, I think, make for a really good topic for today's show. Chad, I ranked in real time the top 25 Longhorns on the Texas football team right now. It's not a projection for how I think they're going to do later in the season. It's not a prediction list. It's a right here in the moment. The season in 2023 ended. And we're taking the group of players that exist and trying to rank them based on what we know and not what we think we know. For instance, you might think that Malik Muhammad is going to be a top 5 Longhorn on this year's team. But is he a top 5 Longhorn right now? Did he do enough during the season that you could rank him above any number of guys? That's part of the conversation that we'll be having today. And Chad, one of the things that stood out to me when I did the list, which you've created a fantastic ticker that will let everyone know the full 25 as we go throughout the show. The portal guys are ranked really high.
Yeah, the portal guys definitely get their love. We will run this at the bottom of the screen for you. So, catches top 25, Longhorns headed into the spring. Let the arguments begin. Here it is.
So we got 1 Kelvin Banks, 2 Quinn Ewers, 3 Anthony Hill, and here come the portal guys. Isaiah Bond is at 4, Trey Moore is at 5, Silas Bolden is at 6. Then there's Johnny Barron, but then there's Andrew Makuba, and then there's Matthew Golden, and then more of the names as you can see. Before we get into the portal, anything jump out from the list, Chad? Anything upon first gander before we jump into the meat of the portal guys, and are they ranked where they should be, or do I have this thing off by a certain degree? What stood out to you about the list?
I mean, the first thing would be, and as you pointed out on your 10 Thoughts column, comes out every Sunday on orangebloods.com, you ended up with the same guy at the top 2 years in a row now. Kelvin Banks still in that top slot. My first question was going to be, where did Quinn Ewers end up? Quinn goes from 20 last year all the way up to 2. So there's a discussion maybe for would a Longhorn fan think Quinn needs to be maybe in the number 1 discussion. And then the next thing to me is about those transfer guys. It's the fact that you have half of your top 10 as transfers.
I wonder with the transfer guys, there's just no doubt about it. They've produced, whereas so many of these guys haven't produced either. I've got a show right there at 15. I've got Colin Simmons. So I'm putting him at 15 before he's ever played a game. But then there are a number of other guys behind him that I think people think are going to be really good. Derek Williams is at 20. Jonte Cook is at 22. You couldn't rank how do you rank Jonte Cook higher than kind of 22 right now when we're not sure if he's going to be a starter? There are 3 transfers who've come in that have produced more than his 8 receptions in a season. And the transfer thing, I think, is really, first of all, there's only one guy on this team that was first team all Big 12 a year ago. That's Kelvin Banks. Mm-hmm. There's not one other player on this list that made first team all Big 12, which is kind of a crazy anecdotal fact when you consider that this team is ranked so high in the preseason. It's a little bit like last year's team where you looked at it on paper and you can see why people would really, really like it. But it's not like Michigan a year ago where they made it to the playoff, lost to TCU, and then a bunch of guys decided to come back. And a lot of the guys that came back were all Big Ten or returning All-Americans. That's not what Texas really has in the cupboard right now. Kelvin Banks made one All-America team last year. He was first team All Big 12. But then you look at Quinn Ewers, and when you have the conversation of where Quinn Ewers should be on the list, he was mostly an honorable mention All Big 12 performer. Some of that comes down to the fact that he missed a few games with the injury, and maybe that played a big role in that. But, Dylan Gabriel was first team All Big 12. Then depending on the list, it was either Will Howard or Quinn Ewers. So it's not a team that comes back with guys that you would say, what are you talking about? This guy was first team Walter Camp All-American a year ago. He has to be in the top 1, 2, or 3 spots. It's a team where most of the guys that have real credentials, their credentials are honorable mention All Big 12 from a year ago, which means they were very good and not quite great. Makes it a little difficult to figure out the order when you've got a pile of players who are have been pretty good, but not yet great pile.
Yeah, it's we get some reactions here. Somebody pointing out the fact that for them, Colin Simmons top 15 as a true freshman, that jumps out immediately. Certainly, that one jumped out to me. Another person saying, "Can Simmons be one? Can you just go ahead and put Colin Simmons?"
That would have been bold.
That's bold. That would have been very, very bold. Yeah, that would have been absolutely bold. We've talked about, you mentioned Jonte Cook. I would have maybe, my heart says Jonte Cook maybe a little higher ranked, but has he? I mean, we're talking about 8 catches. And we know what the potential is.
This isn't about projections.
Right.
This is about right now.
Yeah, right now, probably fair to have him in that spot. I looked at, maybe, just would Jaden Blue need to get notched up just a little bit from where he is? That one kind of jumped out to me when I saw the list the first time. And then also back to the very, very top. I mean, some could argue did you overcook Quinn a little bit by, 2 or 3 spots? If you'd had Quinn at 5 or 6, is that more appropriate?
Who are we putting in front of Quinn?
Like if somebody told you can you make an argument right now that Hill would go above Ewers?
I don't think so. I mean, Anthony Hill was a freshman All-American a year ago, but he was like an honorable mention All Big 12 selection. I don't think he had his fingerprints on the amount of success that Texas had the way that Ewers did. I mean, the thing you'd say about Ewers is that he's the Big 12 championship game MVP. He was lights out against Alabama. So in 2 of the bigger games this season, Quinn Ewers' fingerprints were all over Texas winning those games. I don't know that Anthony Hill was quite that. Now, that's not to say that he's got to be quarterback level production to be ranked ahead of Quinn, but I think he has to have an impact at his position similarly to what Quinn's doing. And I don't think he's done that yet. Now, I've got him at number 3. So there's literally no gap between the two. Quinn Ewers is 2, Anthony Hill is 3. And then come the portal guys. I don't know. It makes for, thank you, Christian. I agree. I found myself really thinking hard about, is this team properly rated? Is a team that only has, and let's say, look, I think Quinn was second team all-team by either the Associated Press or the coaches. He did make an all Big 12 team, second team. I can't remember exactly who it was off the top of my head, but let's give him the benefit of the doubt. He's one of only two. If we give him the benefit of the doubt, there's nobody else that registered quite that high. Jahdae Barron wasn't that high. We start getting into the Ethan Burks of the world, and even Jaden Blue, who I've got at 11. If you took the portal guys out, then Blue would be ranked 6th, I believe, amongst Texas players returning, which is a pretty lofty ranking. I don't know. I found myself having some really good inner dialogue about this team, how important the portal guys are to the success. What would it mean if you took the portal guys out? Because in this set of rankings that I did, Chad, as you pointed out, 5 of the top 10 are portal guys. And when I started the exercise, I didn't know that is how it was going to come out. Hell, our guy Silas Bolden, right, who you and I had on the show less than 2 weeks ago, he comes in at number 6. And it may feel like that is high, but on a Power 5 program that was ranked all season, he led them in receptions, he led them in yards, he was a multi-dual purpose threat, second team all Pac-12 as a kickoff returner. Like, he's got credentials that other players on this team don't have yet. And I feel like once you get from 11 to 25, you can rank a lot. You can almost rank this in any order. I've got Malik Muhammad at 17, but I would listen to an argument that he could be in the top 10, and kind of the same for most of the guys on that list. So on one hand, your top 10 doesn't have a lot of absolute world beaters, proven world beaters. But 11 through 25, you got a bunch of guys that I think are going to make notable impacts this season.
We got some reactions coming in on the chat. Chat, here's an interesting argument, Catch. Sandman says QE is our freaking third-year starting quarterback. Nobody belongs above him at this point. So, Sandman, are you saying he needs to be number 1 and Kelvin Banks needs to be number 2?
Well, he hasn't been a better player than Kelvin Banks. I mean, I don't know how that could even be disputed at this point.
You brought it up, right? One guy is first team all conference.
One guy was first team all conference and all American. And the other guy was honorable mention all Big 12 with the exception of one all Big 12 second team nod. So, you know, I understand. Look, and again, boy, we're really splitting hairs because I've got Ewers at 2 and Banks at 1. So you're not getting too wild and crazy if you flip those guys. But I feel like Kelvin Banks for me I had no reservations. There was no hesitation. Kelvin Banks was number 1 for me. I feel like I put a little bit of thought into it, but I never wavered off of that.
Also, here's an interesting one on number 15. Says, it is against the rest of your logic to put Simmons that high. He's done literally nothing. Simmons at 15 is definitely a projection. That's an interesting kind of part of the discussion, too. When you were looking at somebody like Colin Simmons, and let's be honest here, looking at somebody like Arch Manning, where Arch has participated a little bit, but there hasn't been a ton of it. Jonte Cook, we mentioned, only 8 catches. How did you look at those guys, specifically Simmons, who literally has no place to deal with? You're just trying to figure out where he fits in.
I ask myself, ultimately, Colin Simmons hasn't played, but he's in the program right now. He's on campus. And if you're asking me who the best football players on this team are right now, I think Colin Simmons is kind of right where I slotted him. I expect him to compete for freshman All-America honors. I expect him to be potentially the best pass rusher outside of Trey Moore that the Longhorns have on their team right now. The spring football started right now. Colin Simmons is on the 2 deep and contributing right away, I think, in pass rushing situations. So that's why I've got him at 15. If somebody wanted, and a lot of this has to do with, look, he was a top 10 player in America. So you can't be a top 10 player in America, show up on campus and not be in the top 25. Otherwise, were you really a top 10 player in America? I mean, you either are that guy or you're not.
Right.
And I think Colin Simmons is that guy. If he's not, if you really are thinking he's on campus, but he's not one of the best 24 players on the roster right now, then he was probably overrated as a prospect. So, you know, I might have him overrated, but I might have him underrated. I slotted him in because at the end of the day, there was no player behind him at 15 that I would take right now over him. If you told me Colin Simmons in 2024 right now, or Alfred Collins, or Malik Muhammad's an interesting one. I might have needed to have Malik a little higher, but Baxter, Gunnar Helm, Derek Williams, I've never once thought that they were better players than Colin Simmons, period. So, I guess I have to stay true to my evaluation of who I think Colin Simmons is.
I also wonder, not knowing Alfred Collins, but I wonder if Alfred Collins saw a list like this, based on the fact that they're both defensive linemen. Obviously, a little bit of a different job they're going to do, but based on the fact that Alfred Collins has already put some numbers out there, I wonder if he would see this ranking catch and think to himself, well, the kid is awesome. Like, the kid is a badass. Or would Alfred Collins see that placing and go, wait a minute, hold on, what? And would he be like offended by the fact that Colin Simmons is ahead of him?
He might be offended, but if he was any better than 16, he'd have gone pro. He had a Senior Bowl invite, and the reality of the matter is that Alfred Collins is not going pro this spring, not because he wouldn't get drafted, he would, but because he didn't play well enough last year to play himself into a first or second day selection. So he's coming back trying to pull off the Tavondre Sweat trick. And it's important to note that I think I had Sweat ranked 9th at this time last year. So this isn't projections. This isn't predictions. It's also a reminder. I had Byron Murphy last year. It's funny. I looked it up. A year ago today is when I did the top 25 a year ago.
Wow.
It's funny because I didn't mean for it to occur on the same weekend, but I had the thought to do, this should be what I write about this week. And then I was like, what did they look like a year ago? And I was like, oh, wait. It's literally been 365 days since I had that thought. It's leap year, so maybe it's off by a little bit. But nevertheless, it's a reminder that the way things look today are not necessarily the way things will look in 9 months from now, when Alfred Collins maybe is Tavondre Sweat 2.0, or maybe he's still Alfred Collins that we've always seen and known, and Colin Simmons is on his way to being Big 12 Freshman of the Year, right? So these things, and the thing is, where did I have Ewers at last year? 20?
I believe that's correct.
Because he was coming off of a pretty uneven bad season. He finishes with a quarterback efficiency rating a year ago in the 130s, not good. Whereas you had a bunch of guys that were a little bit more established. It's funny, I wondered if I had done a re-ranking at the end of the season, where would we have had Ewers? Let's just real quick talk this out, Chad, okay?
All right.
He's behind, let's just count out the guys. Ewers behind Jonathan Brooks? I mean, you'd have to say yes, right?
Yes.
Jonathan Brooks would have won the Doak Walker Award over Ollie Gordon if he doesn't get hurt.
Yep.
Adonai Mitchell?
I put him ahead of Ewers, yes.
Me too. Xavier Worthy?
Yeah.
Me too. Jatavian Sanders?
That one's close. Ewers.
Okay. Banks? Sweat? Murphy? Jalen Ford?
That might be a Ewers.
Okay, so I've got 6 guys ahead of him, so that would have him at 7.
Yeah.
I was thinking off of you could quibble, but I think you rightfully called. I think there's a Sanders conversation, a Jalen Ford conversation that means Ewers could be somewhere between 7 and 10.
Backside of the top 10. Yeah, that's what it felt like as you laid that out. I thought 20 doesn't feel right by the end of the year. But yeah, like a top 10 player on that team. Was he like badass, elite, everybody in the country was terrified of him kind of quarterback? No, which wouldn't put him in the top 5, but he's in the back end of the top 10.
By the way, a conversation that we had earlier today on the Monday Overreaction show of, is Quinn Ewers overrated, underrated, or properly rated? I'm kind of in the properly rated view. If you've got him at number 1, you've overrated him. If you've got him as the top 5 or 6 returning quarterbacks in college football, that feels honestly about right. And to have him underrated, you'd have to have him, I think, significantly below that. I don't see much of that happening. Most people are talking about him as a Heisman favorite, which he was a year ago as well. It feels like we need to, when we say those types of things, well, he's like 4th in Heisman odds or whatever the current odds are. It's like, well, he was rated that high a year ago too. It almost feels like from now on, if you're the quarterback at Texas, you're going to have decent Heisman odds as a starting point. Or Steve Sarkisian went to the NFL. Like, I don't know. He just got an extension. So he's here. I feel like the Texas quarterback position is firmly going to be in the Heisman odds every season in the preseason. Let's go to the portal, guys, Chad. And again, if you're just tuning in, you can see on the ticker below how I've rated all of these guys. 5 transfers in the top 10. That was Trey Moore, Isaiah Bond, Silas Bolden, Andrew Makuba, and who am I forgetting as the
Golden?
Oh, and Matthew Golden. I can explain each of the 5. Did you feel like I had instinctively, and 2 of these guys I had in the top 5. So if I had Moore and Bond at 4 and 5 on the list, anybody that you thought maybe I overrated?
I mean, as that part of it goes by, we know what Silas did at Oregon State. Makuba's been a multi-year starter.
3-year starter at Clemson.
Golden put up some good numbers.
2nd team all Big 12 as a kickoff returner and on top of the receiving numbers.
Honestly, no. I guess there could be an argument for should Trey Moore be as highly ranked as you ranked him. But, I mean, with the numbers he put up last year, now the fact that he put them up at UTSA, whereas the receivers put their numbers up at Power 5s, that maybe that's the discussion, is not should Trey Moore be in the top 10, but should he be all the way up at 5? Maybe that would be a discussion based on the fact that he's doing it at that level. And a fan could say, hey, that's UTSA. That's a different, that's what the Sun Belt versus a Power 5. Maybe that's the discussion of do we absolutely know that Trey Moore is about to walk into Austin and just start wrecking shop because he did it in San Antonio?
All great questions, all without, I think, definitive answers. I can't sit here and tell you that last year's nation's leading sack guy and tackles for loss performer is absolutely going to do it the same way at Texas this year. I will say I did have somebody earlier today message me and say, should Trey Moore be number 2 on the list ahead of Quinn Ewers? Because he led the nation in sacks, because he led the nation in tackles for loss, because he was a guy that Texas bent over backwards for to go out and get in the portal, and the same with Nick Saban. That those 2 schools going after that guy with those credentials. In the end, it didn't make me think that I needed to quite rank him that high. Like, I don't know that I can rank Trey Moore over Anthony Hill, but he can't be too far behind given the production that he's had. We're talking about the American Conference Defensive Player of the Year and a guy that's done it 2 years in a row.
Yeah, American, my bad. I said Sun Belt, my bad.
It's tricky. It really is, because I've got Ethan Burke ranked at 10. He had 5.5 sacks. Trey Moore had 14. But it's at UTSA. It's look, this is like the perfect offseason conversation. It is taking what is ultimately a rhetorical question and turning it into a 60-minute special. But, we are in the offseason. It is, to me, perfect offseason discussion. JD says that Jade is too low on that list. Except what I would say, JD, is that Jade didn't have a great year last year. He was only honorable mention all Big 12. And if he were justifiably higher on the list, he also would have gone pro. One of the reasons why he's coming back was because he didn't have a great year a year ago. I think one of the things that we've got to do is take that Texas confirmation bias out of our head. The idea of what we think Jahdae Barron is versus what Jahdae Barron actually did. And those two things aren't exactly the same. I think Texas fans think that Jahdae Barron was one of the best players on the Texas defense a year ago, except he didn't perform that way. He didn't remotely deserve to be in the same conversation with a Sweat or a Murphy. Look, I got him at 7. Could he be in the conversation with Anthony Hill? Maybe. Are any of you taking Jahdae Barron over Anthony Hill? I can't imagine the answer to that is yes. So the only other defensive player ranked ahead of him would be Trey Moore. And again, we get into this conversation of what Trey Moore did in the American Conference, piling up gaudy stats versus a very underwhelming season that Barron had a year ago.
It's interesting stuff. JD, thank you for that chat jumping in. Thanks to everybody who's jumped into the Specs chat already today. We are headed up towards 200 very quickly. We appreciate you there. Let me hit you with a little sinus and snoring specialist. If you want to breathe better, sleep better, feel better, rest better, this is the place. Sinus and snoring specialist. Weather still doing what it does this time of year in the great state of Texas. It's cold as hell one day and then it's hot as hell the next day. It's not humid one day and then it's humid the next day. That can really mess with you when it comes to sinus headaches and allergies and all that kind of stuff. Sinus and snoring specialists can deal with all that. They can get rid of your allergies for good, just like they did with me. They can get you sleeping better, resting better, just like they did with me and my wife. And they've done it with thousands of others. Some of you have already checked them out and let us know that you told them you saw it, you heard about it on Orange Bloods Live, and we appreciate it. Get to feeling better, resting better, make it your gift to yourself for a birthday coming up or an anniversary coming up or spring or whatever it is. Sinus and snoring specialists, feel clear, rested, and healthy. All right. As we continue today, Catch, before we get back into the discussion, I just have a quick question of, does something just need to be addressed on the show? Like, does something need to be addressed?
Hold on.
The show?
Can I get something? It won't work. I'm trying to sprinkle the little stuff that turned the Beetlejuice, shrunk his head.
Because what ultimately happened in my theory of what happened here is, I think my perspective is basically the same, but I do feel like you are even closer than normal. So I think you went giant mode and I either stayed the same or maybe I went back a little bit. And now everybody's really noticing a serious contrast here. I haven't really noticed it before. Honestly, I had not thought about it, but I'm sort of so I don't know. Maybe we do need to reconsider the Hall of Helmets perspective. Maybe me and not the Hall of Helmets needs to be more of the focus. I have no idea, but
I don't know. I don't know what happened, but it does seem more pronounced, doesn't it?
Yeah, it really does. And I swear there was no meeting where Ketch said, let me represent Big Brother in the House Divided and Chad will represent Little Brother in the House Divided. That never happened. That discussion.
You know what happened, Chad?
Huh?
We let the UT graphics department, the one that created the state of Texas, where A&M had the one little bitty pet place, and then Texas was the big, conquering side. That's what happened. Like we didn't notice it, but they came in and ratioed you.
Man, you're absolutely right. I wish we still had that panel. Apparently, we don't have that panel. Maybe
Onward just deleted that this morning.
That's probably good. That's probably good for me in this situation. So yeah, for me to equal it, I would have to be like this. I would have to be like, like that.
Well, there's promise. There's promise. We never say never. I've got just to circle back on this though. Bond at 4, Moore at 5, Bolden at 6, Makuba at 8, and Golden at 9. That's 5 of the top 9. What does it mean that 5 of the top 9 are portal guys and not guys that played in a national semifinal a year ago, although obviously Isaiah Bond did?
I mean, I think there's a reload quality to that. If I'm a Texas fan and I'm reading the sport right now, I mean, it speaks to the receivers lost. It speaks to the receivers Texas lost. And catch, it speaks to what's important right now in college football. The fact that Steve Sarkisian's dialed into that. And they also were able to take advantage of it, of Nick Saban retiring. Like all of that came together, and it wasn't just one thing. Like there's a combo of things that you had to deal with, because think about it. Back to Steve Sarkisian's coaching malpractice comment. The malpractice would have been that if a guy that you ranked 22 on this football team would have ended up being the guy with the most catches coming into the year. That's the malpractice part he's talking about. Had to deal with it, they did. And they were able to do that in multiple ways, figured out a way to make the Makuba thing work, figured out a way to make the Trey Moore thing work. And if I'm a Texas fan looking at those rankings, I understand there could be a little nitpicking of it. And what does that say about your team? I think it means your team is up to date with what college football's got going right now.
Couple of interesting comments. Let's go to Chris Bennett first. Shout out to Chris Bennett. Hope you're having a great day up in Washington State. Bert Auburn, better kicker than Dicker? I would say no. But should Bert Auburn be on this list?
Now, that's a fair question. That is a more than fair question. If a Bert Auburn sees that Arch Manning is 24 on this list and Jonte Cook is 22, Bert Auburn might think, hey, where do I fit into this discussion? Because I've been hitting kicks for a while.
Is Bert Auburn a better player than Gunnar Helm? Helm's at 19.
I think there's an argument to put Auburn in the back from 20 to 25, somewhere in there. Yeah, that neighborhood.
Bert Auburn versus Alabama tight end transfer Amari Nyblack. Probably a fair conversation. I will say this. Bert Auburn would have been in my next 5. So if we extended this out to 26 to 30, he makes the list. And I won't argue at all if somebody thinks he needed to be in the back end of the top 25.
Yeah, you could swap him for Nyblack, or you could swap him for who you just maybe Gunnar Helm too. Either one.
Got to be honest. Once we hit the back end of the top 25, there's a little bit of a shoulder shrug with. I won't argue on the order. You know what I mean? If someone right. chimes in and says Cam Williams should be in the top 25 in the back end ahead of a couple of these other guys, okay, I won't right. argue that at all. I tell you what's an interesting deal. The question becomes, and here, I tell you what, let's get a couple of other ones. JD rightfully says Silas Bolden also could have went pro. He's talking about the Jahdae Barron discussion. Mm-hmm. He could have. I think his size issue makes him an NFL in a year where the wide receiver position is ridiculously deep. I think he's punished by his size. And I don't know what his NFL if Cody, don't you dare call him Carpenter, but Carpentier, yeah, Carpentier, right?
I believe that is true. Or Carpentier?
Cody
yes. Carpentier.
I did a pronunciation guide for now that I saw the I. Now I'm completely thrown off by all of it. I wonder what he would say about Silas's NFL draft upside. We might just be talking about a guy in Silas Bolden who's a plus college player, but maybe not a plus pro prospect. Those things don't always go hand in hand. There's the occasional outlier. Poona Ford is a perfect example when we think about former Texas players who were great college players but the NFL didn't really sniff, and then they end up going like undrafted, but then playing in the league forever. I'm not saying I think that's what's going to happen with Silas Bolden. I'm just saying I think he falls into this category of the island of misfit toys, where they don't quite fit the NFL preference of something physically, and that's why it didn't quite happen. I don't think that's who Jahdae Barron is, but yeah, they're in the category of guys that are really good college players and haven't gone pro yet for a variety of reasons. Let me see real quick. There's a lot of people agreeing with the Jahdae Barron stance. Stanley says Barron took a step back last year, but had a solid year. 2022 was better for him individually. I don't know that I would disagree with that at all. Chris, by the way, Chad, Chris just wants you to know September 6th, Beetlejuice 2 comes out.
Fair enough. I've never seen Beetlejuice 1, by the way.
What?
Never seen Beetlejuice. I'm a Michael Keaton guy, but I'm not a horror movie guy, and I know it's a little in that world. Isn't it a Tim Burton?
Yes.
The Tim Burton deal. It's not that I wouldn't watch it. It's just my wife's into it. She'll watch. I've never watched it all the way through, ever.
I've never thought of it as a horror. If that means
okay.
Look,
I know
a list of things that I want you to see. Right. I'm not rushing Beetlejuice to the top of the list.
Fair
but
enough.
It's very good.
Yeah. By the way, apparently I got the last name right. Cody says I was right. Carpentier. And then Hunter. This will help you catch because we go right to remember the Titans like Gary Bertier. Carpentier.
Bertier.
There it is.
Okay.
There it is. Thank you,
Nice
Hunter.
job, Hunter. By the way,
Cody.
nice. Remember the Titans reference.
Yes. Little Gary Bertier reference. Somebody had an interesting comment here about Makuba, Catch. Let's read through this one. Trey says, Makuba needs some explaining. His thing people say is multi-year starter at Clemson. Not sure how that distinguishes him from Jahdae or Sorrell. And is he today over Muhammad and Williams in the secondary?
Trey, excellent submission into the specs chat. I like it. You're asking to steal from True Detective season 4. You're asking the right questions. So let's go through this. He's a multi-year starter at Clemson. Look, freshman All-American. Not more than honorable mention, though, in either of his next 2 years. So he hasn't been great. Had he been great, he'd be in the NFL like some of these other guys that we're having conversations with. Not sure how that distinguishes him from Jahdae or Sorrell. I don't know that he's in an area of the rankings where I've got him at 8. I don't know that from 8 until where I've got Sorrell. And look, I've got Jahdae listed ahead of him. I've got Sorrell at 13. I don't know that there's a lot of difference there. Jaden Blues at 11. He had less than 400 yards rushing a year ago. DJ Campbell is listed above Sorrell. He was the second best starter or the third best starter on a really good offensive line, but he wasn't really considered one of the better players in the Big 12 at his position. He won't enter this season thought that way. I think all of these guys from 8 to 15, if you will, are players that are roughly ranked the same. It's all about preferential order at that point. If you wanted to rank Sorrell over him, I get it. I don't know that I necessarily agree with it, but it's really close. And if you're asking, is he today over Muhammad and Williams in the secondary? I think Makuba is the first name on the team sheet, which is a soccer term, Chad. Whenever a coach turns in his lineup, it's his team sheet.
The team sheet.
It's the idea of like turning in a lineup in baseball.
Right.
If Texas was turning in a lineup for a game, I think Makuba is the first name on the list in at safety. So I would, yes, have him over Derek Williams today. Does that mean I think he's going to be ahead of Derek Williams at the end of this season? I don't mean that at all. Like, those are two separate conversations. And then with Muhammad's only started 2 games. And he hasn't been a true standout star yet. So I'll go with, for now, because again, remember, this is a ranking of the right here and the right now. I'll go with the guy who's been a 3-year starter at Clemson and has been a very good player over a guy that's still establishing himself. But, Chad, if somebody wanted to rank Malik Muhammad ahead of Andrew Makuba, I wouldn't tussle with them too much. I mean, the point that I keep trying to make is that once you get beyond the top 2 guys on the list, Ewers and Banks, if you take the portal guys out, there's nobody left that was of an all Big 12 caliber player a year ago. So you're left debating a group of guys that were pretty good. And if we got 10 guys who were all pretty good, I don't know that I can argue real strongly for any of them over another pretty good player when the level's only pretty good.
Trey, we appreciate that chat. Thanks to everybody for jumping in. Obviously, those super chats go right to the front. Got a couple interesting chats we will get to. But first, Catch, why don't you tell the folks about My Perfect Franchise on a Monday, because Andy can help them out.
Yes, and by the way, when we come back, I'm telling you, I'm asking one more good question about this, Chad. My Perfect Franchise, look, it's all about living the dream. It's all about having the job and the career that you've always wanted. Do you hate your job? Do you hate your boss? Is there an idea that you've had that you've always wanted to do and that you've just never quite been able to weaponize because you don't know how to do it? That's what Andy specializes in, helping you get your idea off the ground floor. Call him at 404-973-9901 or email him, Andy@myperfectfranchise.net. I would suggest just text him. Just text him and say, hey, I saw you on Orange Bloods Live. I want to run an idea by you. Can we talk? And he's going to say yes. He's not going to charge you a thing. This only works if steps are taken. And the initial conversation does not count as one of those steps. So there's no risk whatsoever, nothing out of pocket to find out, can he help you get your idea and your business and the change of life that you want off the ground? Reach out to Andy at myperfectfranchise.net. Okay, Chad, here's my last question on this. And for the record, I have all 5 of my buy or sell questions into the program. When we get to buy or sell, I'm not even rushing to get there. I got it taken care of.
Well done.
And as a tease, there's a hotter than with a birthday girl.
Yeah.
Who is in Game of Thrones.
Oh, okay. Fair enough.
We're going Game of Thrones hotter than
all right.
Buy or sell. I hope you also didn't do.
I did not do a Game of Thrones hotter than, but I'm excited. I hope there's a dragon involved.
There will be a dragon involved.
Excellent.
But it's not the dragon lady's birthday, for the record.
Oh, okay.
Also known as Khaleesi. She's got like 19 names. She's like not Clubber Lang. She's like Apollo Creed. She had like 20 nicknames.
Or Voldemort or Kang the Conqueror. Yeah, lots of names. Got lots of names.
There's a scene when Jon Snow meets Khaleesi. And remember the girl that's like her assistant?
Yes.
The one that falls in love with Grey Worm? I can't remember her name.
Yeah.
But she does the introduction to Jon Snow. And there's like the breaker of chains. And she's like going through them all. And it very much felt like when Rocky and Apollo were in the ring. And it's just Mick and Rocky standing next to each other. And then like they're going through the nicknames and they're like looking at each other like, God, it never stops. This guy's something else.
He's a badass.
Let's close our eyes. We're going to do that. We'll do.
Here we go. Here we go.
Yeah, I always have a movie reference, right? We're going
you do.
We're going to do the time to kill thing.
All right.
Imagine that I've eliminated all of the portal guys.
Okay.
What do you think about a top 5 or top 6 that sounds like this? Close your eyes.
Okay.
1 Banks, 2 Ewers,
Mm-hmm.
3 Anthony Hill, 4 Jahdae Barron, 5 Ethan Burke. What do we feel about the top 5 if we eliminate the portal guys? And 6 would be Blue, and 7 would be DJ Campbell. How do you feel about the list, non-portal additions?
My first reaction would be some guys really have to step up, and why didn't they do more in the portal?
They really needed to go into the portal.
That would be the reaction. If you're going to put Ethan Burke that high based on what we saw, not that he didn't do anything, but now you're saying, oh, wow, he really needs to take that next step. Jahdae Barron really needs to take another step there. And when you don't have any receivers at that front end, and then if you finish out that top 10 and there are no receivers there, then I get right back to, whoa, they didn't do anything in the portal. Jonte Cook, holy mackerel, you got to be good, and you got to be good immediately. That's what it would signal to me. If you get, especially if we're talking about this time of year, Catch, what it would say to me is if you are not paying attention to what that April window is going to be, you better get there fast.
My initial reaction is it's not a national championship level team.
Right.
If your 4th best player is Barron from a year ago, who I don't know what he is as an NFL draft prospect. I don't know that he's a true standout college player. And then look, Ethan Burke, he led the team in sacks in 5.5. He was one of the best players on the field against Alabama. There are some things about his game that warrant him being ranked ultimately 10th on this list, not in the top 5. But, again, everybody's starting with 2 has to be better. This year isn't good enough. Not for Ewers, not for Hill, not for Barron, not for Burke, not for Blue, not for Campbell, not for Sorrell, not for Majors, not for Alfred Collins. Every guy on this list and this is why Kelvin Banks is number 1. Because if you told me Kelvin Banks was only exactly as good as he was a year ago, we're talking about one of the best offensive linemen in the SEC. Ewers isn't far away from that, but I think there's still a feeling that he has to take a step, and that's the case with every single guy on this team. The good news is, that sounds scary. It almost sounds like, well, Catch, you're trying to say the Longhorns aren't very good and they shouldn't be a preseason top 5. And no, what I would actually say is this team on paper looks very similar to last year's team. Do you know who I had number 2 last year, Chad? Xavier Worthy. And do you know, I was going through that thread, and one of the very first I would implore everybody who was on Orange Bloods, go back and look at the commentary from last year after I posted this exact same deal. The all-time legendary poster CS, who a lot of people think is me. They think it's me. I once had the head of Rivals.com call me up and ask, are you CS? And I had to explain to him, no, I'm not. CS wrote, if Xavier Worthy is our 2nd best player, we're fucked. And you know what? A year ago at this time, Xavier Worthy was in the category of guys, they got to be better.
Yep.
But this past year, Xavier Worthy was an All-American. This past year, he had one of the best punt return seasons of all time. He was a 1,000-yard receiver. He finally assumed the position and the mantle of the kind of player that he was kind of expected to be after his freshman season. I think 2024 looks a lot like 2023. I think almost the entire list is made up of very talented guys who haven't quite done it yet. There's no reason for fear, because if last year taught us anything, As long as you've got a high volume of guys who are really, really talented, guys will emerge almost certainly as big bad mamma jammas. And that happened last year with Sweat, with Murphy. Neither of those guys were being talked about as top 5 guys. I went and checked. I did this last year. There were about 10 pages of conversation about my rankings last year, Chad. Not one person in that entire thread that was almost 300 comments deep mentioned, hey, you have Sweat too low at 9 or you have Murphy too low at 17. Nobody disagreed. Everybody kind of, that's about right. If I don't see a comment, that means that nobody disputed it. Trust me, if I ever have anything that people truly dispute, they will dispute it. You know one thing that also hasn't been disputed, Chad? And this is low-key really interesting. Nobody has either A, said that Jaden Blue at 11 is too high. No one has said that CJ Baxter, I think I've got him at 17. Nobody has said that Baxter is too low. And nobody has said, either in our chat or on Orange Bloods, the website, that Baxter should be ahead of Blue. Steve Sarkisian has not entered the chat.
He's not there.
He's not here.
11 and...
I've got Baxter at 18.
18, 11 and 18. Yeah, we had not talked about that separation yet. Because I mentioned earlier with Jaden Blue, like when I first saw that ranking on Blue, I thought, well, could Blue be even a little higher? But I hadn't considered.
Cody read my mind.
Yeah. No conversation about Blue versus Baxter.
It's just kind of surprising.
Interesting, Cody. Very interesting.
He read my mind. I was thinking the exact same thing.
Yep.
You mentioned you thought Blue could have been higher. And look, you know why Blue's ranked 11 and Baxter's ranked 18th? Because Blue averaged 6 yards per carry and Baxter averaged 4.8. And there's no world where you're ever going to convince me that a guy who's averaging 4.8 yards per carry needs to be ranked higher. If anything, I would look at CJ Baxter's freshman production and I wonder, God, should he maybe be 19? Should he really be 20? Do I have Terrence? If Texas hadn't been trying to replace Terrence Brooks with another Muhammad out of Washington, had that not happened, do we look at Terrence Brooks a little bit different after 2 years as a starter? I think we're somewhat clouded by the reality that Texas has seemingly tried to replace him in the starting lineup this offseason, but he's still a guy that's been pretty damn good so far. I think of him as a future NFL player. I think in reality, I look at most of this top 25. I think most of these guys are eventually going to play on Sundays. I tell you what, we're at 12, right? I'm going to read the names. You tell me when you get to a no on Sundays. Campbell, Sorrell, Majors, maybe. Collins, Muhammad, Baxter, Helm, Williams, Brooks, Jonte Cook, Amari Nyblack, Arch Manning, Michael Taft.
And we're talking about a no on a Sunday, no on an NFL player.
Correct.
Like, I don't know that I'm absolutely certain right now on Helm and Taft.
I think I am on Helm, mainly because Jeff Swaim got drafted. And Gunnar Helm is a better, and I know it's not, this Jeff Swaim's like a decade ago, but I only say his name to reflect that I think the tight end position in the NFL is important enough that even guys that sometimes we don't think are great players end up being NFL drafted players and sticking around in the league because guys at that position are really hard to find. I'm sold that Gunnar Helm's going to play on Sunday. Now, that doesn't mean that I think he's going to be – I don't know where that means I think he's getting drafted. My confidence does not mean I think he's a top 100 picks guy or necessarily plays 10 years in the league. But I think he's better than Andrew Beck was. And Andrew Beck is carved out a role on NFL rosters. He even had a freak. If you haven't seen what he did with the Texans, I can't help now. When I think of his name, I think of that kickoff return.
The kick return in Jacksonville, yeah.
Yes.
75 yards, something like that.
It was pretty spectacular. And, he's ultimately going to earn his pension, which is a critically important thing for every NFL player. To play long enough in the league that you earned your pension means you were an NFL player.
Yeah.
I think the point that stands out in all of that this whole top 25 list is full of guys that haven't taken the step yet. But if all we've got to nitpick is whether or not we think Helm or Taff are future NFL players, that means there's a shitload of NFL talent on this top 25. And it's just that they haven't, by the way,
what up, Sark?
Oh, it's good to see Sark. Come on in. Come on in. Hey, Sark, couple of things now that he has entered the chat. Number one, don't get mad at me about the CJ Baxter ranking. I know that's your boo, but simmer down. I feel like that's why he's in the chat. What else what of the top 25 would Sark take objection to?
No, that's a good question. I mean, Sark's a quarterback, so I think he would want Ewers to be 1, and he would want Arch Manning to be top 10.
Interesting.
Yeah, I think that's maybe where he would start. By the way, our guy Cody Carpentier says, I think the 25 Byron Murphy Bad Rank Award will go to Cam Williams. There you go, Cody.
Did you see, Cody, you weren't in the chat last year. Nobody was caping for Byron in the chat last year, primarily because Chad and I weren't doing a show last February. Sure. I mean, technically. But
that's true.
Here's what ultimately is going to have to happen. When we get closer to the show, this list will go from where we think they are in February to what do we think it's going to look like in December. What's a projection list look like? And Cody, I don't know when I'll do that, but if we get, it might be next week. We might hit the stage of the offseason where it's time for projections. But if that's the case, there's a lot of guys on this list that aren't in the top 10. But I'm thinking Jonte Cook comes to mind. Malik Muhammad comes to mind. Derek Williams comes to mind. Suddenly every guy after Blue is a guy that could win the Byron Murphy Bad Rank Award. So could Cam Williams. Cam Williams probably would have been number 26 on my list. Can the best backup offensive lineman on your team, who hasn't played a lot of snaps yet, can I rank him above Nye Black, who actually had a really good season for Alabama, Arch Manning, Cam Williams, or Michael Taff? You could justify Cam.
Yeah, you could.
Again, 26 through 30, you could squeeze into the top 25. No problem. We talked about Bert Auburn like that. I will say this about Arch, and maybe we'll go into this a little bit more tomorrow. Arch goes by the Colin Simmons rule. If you were a top 10 prospect in the country, regardless of position, you're in the top 25.
Yeah, no, I think that's probably fair. We're headed towards buy or sell here. Real quick before we get there, Catch, someone commented earlier on Beetlejuice and said it's an acid movie for them when we said I hadn't seen Beetlejuice. Another fan wants to know. Cody wants to know, what movie are you rushing Chad to see right now, Catch? As far as I know, there's nothing on the list. You told me to watch The Bear. I did. You told me to see No Country for Old Men, and I did. So I don't know if there's anything currently on my list.
We need to work on that.
That's just,
Because I know there are movies. The thing is, you're not Sukamel. Like, Sukamel still hasn't seen Godfather 2.
Ah, I see. Okay. So I'm not quite that
And then
bad.
he's claiming that it might be 40 years before he sees it.
But there's a list. There's a weird list of movies where it depends. Yeah, it's just, again, you get to that conversation of, oh, I haven't seen that. I haven't seen a lot of, like, the classic sports movies people talk about. I haven't seen some of them. Depending on which way you go. You go down the comedy road and make a Waterboy reference. I've never seen that movie. Never watched it all the way through.
I'll tell you what movie. I'll put it out there. Have you seen Stallone in Over the Top?
Nope, not all the way through.
The greatest arm wrestling movie ever made.
It's the only one, I would think, but yes.
Well, let's not get into the nitpicks. You haven't even seen it.
Yeah, I've never seen Over the Top all the way through. No.
Do you know what my wife says about Over the Top? And we'll go into buy or sell after this. She claims that I like that movie so much because I want the Stallone character to be my dad. Because the whole movie is about Stallone being a father to a rich kid. They have no relationship. And then Stallone takes over being a good dad. And so she's like, you just want Stallone to fill the dad void in your life. And you like Over the Top. And I'm like, you know what, honey, shut up. Because B, that may be way too close to reality. Like, you know, you're scratching a wound there. Careful.
All right. I have the pen ready. Is Over the Top going on my list?
It's got a young Terry Funk in it, by the way.
Okay.
So I'm just letting you know you're getting maybe Terry Funk's finest acting performance.
Better than Terry Funk in Roadhouse?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah, I'm ready to write it down if you're ready to put it on the list.
Oh man. Put it on the list.
Over the Top.
My God, if the man hasn't seen Over the Top,
okay,
and he's in his 40s, he hasn't lived.
All right, Over the Top. And I'm not in my 40s very much longer, so we need to get that done. There we go.
Weirdly,
Cody.
Everybody seems to be advocating for Over the Top, which I didn't know if that would happen.
Okay. Over the Top is now on the list. We will get that done. We appreciate everybody for jumping in the chat and trying to help me become a more well-rounded human being. I do appreciate that. And maybe even be a larger human being. And we'll get the camera set right and everything. Speaking of something that is always on my list, Hayes City Store is always on my list. Love going out there. Love all the stuff that they've got at Hayes City Store. Just make your plans. It's springtime. The weather's great. And find those days when you get that perfect spring weather in Texas and head on out to Hayes City Store in Driftwood. It is FM 150 in Driftwood. Go say hi to Travis and Tamara and the crew. They always treat you so nice. Every detail. I always talk about the detail of the food. The detail of service is unbelievable. Never bad service at Hayes City Store. Everybody's got a smile. Everybody enjoys it. And the knowledge of the menu is great. Every waiter or waitress I've ever had at Hayes City Store, they know little things, little details. It's not just they say it's their favorite because you said it. They'll tell you certain things about those entrees and the desserts and the drinks and let you know what's on tap that day. It's just awesome stuff. Check them out. They got daily specials like half price bottles of wine, $3 pint domestic, $4 pint craft beers. And for dessert, check out that bourbon milkshake. It is unbelievable. Hayes City Store, one of our favorite places on earth. All right, Mr. Ketchum, it is across that 1 o'clock spot. That means it's time for a little buy or sell. Do you want to go first or second today?
Real quick, Cody. Spoiler alert. We don't necessarily.
I do know that. I know the movie well enough to know that the hat backwards thing is part of it. I know that. Yes.
Okay. I'm just saying we don't want to spoil the richness and goodness of the movie.
I know some ingredients. I know him. I know the kid. I know the kid by sight. And I know that you've got Kenny Loggins' Meet Me Halfway is on the soundtrack. and Sammy Hagar does the over the top, the actual title track. So I know some elements. I've just never sat down and watched the whole thing.
You've got Harry Bosco, who's head of the Teamsters. You've got the infamous Bull Hurley. Oh, some people would probably tell you that I look like Bull Hurley. I don't know that that's nice, but we do have the same hairline. Okay. By the way, Sark, get back to work. We appreciate it. Pop back in next week.
Good to see you,
okay
Sark.
with an occasional check-in. By the way, Sark, you can catch up on any of the shows after they're live. They're on YouTube. I know you're busy. You may not know how YouTube works because you're a coach, but we're always there for you when you need us. All right. You ready to do some buy or sell?
Let's do it. Who's first?
I'll let you go first today.
All right, here we go. Speaking of Sark, catch, buy or sell number 1. Sark's extension makes total sense to you. Texas got their guy, shored up his guys, and they didn't go crazy.
Buy. I think having to put 4 years on the extension instead of 3 is probably the less optimal approach. If you'd ask me what's the sweet spot, I would have said 3. But I've also would have said his agent is Jimmy Sexton, and there's no way Jimmy Sexton is going to let them get away with an extension that only has 3 years on it. So it ends up having 4. We're talking about 70+ million now that's guaranteed, essentially. I don't believe there's a buyout number in the contract. So, careful what you ask for at times. But yeah, I think we were just about the point where we were going to see Sark and the school talking about an extension. He has the big year. This is what it looks like. I think all sides of the agreement can feel good about it, but there are Aggies out there that would say, hey, careful with that whole 70 million left, as a number on a contract, but it's not quite apples to apples. I think everybody wins with that contract extension.
Yeah, for the record, I have not heard that it is a fully guaranteed contract. That never came out of anybody's mouth, correct?
I haven't heard that I'm just saying, I haven't seen in the language or heard that there's a buyout number.
Gotcha.
Doesn't mean that there's not one, but it could be fully guaranteed. I don't think it would shock if it is.
Yeah, well, that'll create a conversation if it is fully guaranteed, but we'll get to that if it happens. Buy or sell number 2, catch. The back-to-back NBA dunk contest winner is a G League player. That has to be a problem on some level.
Buy. He has, Matt McClung, almost as many dunk championships, 2, as he has games played in the NBA, 4.
Interesting. All right.
Which, honestly, I weirdly am not rooting for him to make the NBA. I want the number to stay at 4, and I want him to win 2 more consecutive dunk championships so that I'm seriously messed up, people.
That is messed up.
Matt McClung is telling me right now in the chat, that is not my goal.
No.
But, yeah, look, the whole NBA All-Star weekend isn't working right now. And I didn't watch a second of it. Not a second, Chad. Not of the game last night. No, that's not true. I did watch about 5 seconds of the game. But then that was it. I didn't watch any of Saturday's stuff, although I was I was listening to the people nitpick the coverage on social media. Like apparently Kenny Smith said that when Steph Curry and the woman whose name I can't completely remember.
Sabrina Ionescu.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
When she apparently, when Steph beats her, he referenced that maybe she should have shot from the women's 3-point line, and everybody was insulted because she had the same score that Damian Lillard had in the actual 3-point contest. Other than like that, doesn't seem like I missed much. Apparently TNT missed a dunk or 2 in the contest. The game last night, nobody cares. The whole thing is a problem.
All right, buy or sell number 3, catch. The people have spoken, and they have convinced you Texas wins 10+ and a playoff game this season.
Sell. I'm not far away from that, but am I convinced? No. Am I absolutely convinced that Texas makes the playoff and wins a game? No. Is that within the realm of possibilities? Absolutely.
All right, so you kind of did this one, but I'm going to make sure we're clear here. Buy or sell number 4. The fact that the winning team in the NBA All-Star game scored 211 points does not bother you because you didn't watch.
Buy. Although at halftime, when I saw the score at halftime, I was keeping up online with who the scoring leaders was. Although wasn't watching the game, was semi-curious at who might win the MVP. When I saw that they were on pace for 200 plus points, I wondered, has that ever happened in an all-star game before? Have they hit the 200 number? But no, it didn't bother me enough because I didn't watch. But maybe that's a sell because that doesn't make me want to watch. So maybe it does bother me a little bit because it's not incentivizing me to watch.
And finally, catch buy or sell number 5. Here we go. Moment of truth. True Detective, Night Country. They landed the plane. You enjoyed it.
Buy. The thing is, I like the season finale more, almost, I think, more than I like the series as a whole.
That's a first for that show.
It is.
Yeah.
I like that in the season finale, it turned into a cop investigation, like crime solving kind of show. Whereas I felt like I wasn't a big fan of the supernatural tie-ins. I don't know that they even completely pulled all that together. I still don't know who the hell was throwing oranges at people. There were some things that didn't get answered, but almost all of it's on the supernatural side. I thought last night's episode was my favorite episode of the 6-episode series. I don't know that I loved season 4, but I do think they landed the plane. But I know that that is not a consensus opinion. But if you're asking me, when it ended last night, I felt good about it. I wasn't nitpicking the finale, even though there are some things that I think could nitpick. All in all, yes. I think they landed the plane, but it might have been a bumpy landing. I've been on a few of those in my life where, things fall down because the plane hits the ground too hard. But ultimately, did we make it? Yes. Okay.
I told my wife, sometimes the plane is a little bit off the runway and they have to use those raft things. They have to use the ramps to help you out of the plane. That's kind of what it was like.
Yes. And by the way, what did you think? I have that as a question. I'm taking it off the board and creating a different question for you.
Oh, you
did you think they landed the plane?
Either way. I mean, kind of the similar answer. I say, yes, they landed the plane. It was a little awkward, but they landed it. I think it's the best finish they've had on it. It's a low bar, because True Detective is the weirdest show on TV for me because it always gives you the start is good, the middle is good, and then the end just goes bleh. This one at least found a way to get to the end. It sort of made sense. Still lots of unanswered questions. True Detective does not know if it wants to be a supernatural show or not. It can't figure it out. It's gone through 4 full seasons, and it still doesn't know if it wants to be a cop show or if it wants like a creepy cop show or if it wants to be a supernatural show. They still don't know. Matthew, Woody, all of you, figure that out, and you might actually have a full season at some point.
Ditto. Man. All right. Buy or sell number 1, you'd have Trey Moore in the top 5 of current Texas players.
I'm going to sell. I'd probably back him up just a little bit. I'd probably back it up just a little bit, make him like back into the top 10s, but only a couple spots. I might go like 7, something like that. I wouldn't quite make it top 5. Texas fans hope he proves me wrong, but just based on, the level where he was playing. No disrespect there, but just trying to be realistic, because
American Conference sucks.
I would give those Power 5 transfer guys a little love and maybe slot them above Trey Moore.
You may have just answered my second buy or sell question, which is Isaiah Bond should be ranked higher than Trey Moore in the top 25 list.
Yeah, I think that's a buy. I think that's a buy. Give him the respect of the season he ended up having throughout the year at Bama, the fact that it was at Bama. He's supposed to be a badass. Yeah, I'd give him a little more love than Moore.
You know what? I'm not going to fix my editing issue here. I've got a typo.
Okay.
So just go with me here.
Okay.
Buy or sell number 3. Micah Parsons won the Celeb All-Star MVP on Dry Day night.
Yeah. Sweet.
It'll be the biggest trophy he ever wins as a Cowboy. Buy or sell.
Oh, my God. Thank God it's Dry Day. All right. So it'll be the biggest trophy he ever wins with the Cowboys. How dare you?
I didn't write that with a smile on my face. I write it with sadness.
Can you give me a sense real quick for how big the trophy was? Like, have you seen him with it?
No.
Okay.
Because I didn't watch it.
Because I'm thinking about, like, if Parsons ever wins because it's the biggest trophy because that little,
are you
like
going
an
literal
NFC
here? Like, well, he may win like a turkey drumstick on Thanksgiving, and depending on how big the turkey is, it could be a bigger award.
Well, I mean, the Walter Payton Man of the Year is that's a pretty big award. It'll be the biggest trophy he ever wins with the Cow. I'm going to sell. I know exactly what you're doing, but I'm going to sell. Somewhere along the way, there's like a Payton Man of the Year. There's a Player of the Year. There's some Writers Award. Is it going to be the NFC Championship Trophy? No. Is it going to be the Super Bowl Championship Trophy? No. But he'll win a trophy that is physically larger than the one he got for crossing over Stephen A. Smith. That's what I'm going to say.
All you had to say was that he'll win like Defensive Player of the Year award at some point.
That's got to be bigger than that award. So, yes, I'm selling.
That's all you had to say. You really made that into a bigger problem than it needed to be.
I know I did. I'm a Cowboys fan. That's what I do.
Buy or sell number 4. It doesn't pop up on the screen, but Madam Web. Everything that you wanted it to be and more.
Let's see.
It is a 13% grade on Rotten Tomatoes.
Sell. Everything we wanted it to be and everything we expected and less is what I would say from Madam Web. So right now, Catch, the slotting is pretty simple. My daughter and I have agreed. We have a consensus. It is slightly better, we believe, than The Flash, but it is worse than Thor: Love and Thunder. Thor: Love and Thunder is a little bit better than Madam Web. Madam Web is a skosh better than The Flash and here's how I broke the tie. In the case of Ezra Miller's performance, at one point for a good hunk of the movie, I have to deal with the fact that there are 2 of him on my screen. Spoiler alert, I never had to deal with 2 Dakota Johnsons for any serious length of time. So therefore, it's slotted above. But Catch, it's got to be the worst Marvel movie ever made. They are in a bad spot right now. They can't figure out a lot of things. It was a horrible idea, horribly executed. I feel bad for all those actors that were a part of it because that thing went nowhere and it went there fast.
All right. And finally, buy or sell number 5. It's birthday time.
Okay.
Our girl, Queen Marjorie, Natalie Dorner, turns 42 today. In a prime on prime Game of Thrones hotter than, you'll take Queen Marjorie, Natalie Dormer, hotter than Queen of Dragons, Emilia Clarke.
All right, hang on. Let me just look up Natalie Dormer real quick. Oh, I got you. Okay. I just had to make sure I know who you're talking about. That's a sell. I'm an Emilia Clarke guy, and I'm going with Emilia on this one.
Wow.
She's got that magic smile, Catch. You know, I'm a big fan of the magic smile. Emilia Clarke's got one, and she's awesome. Love Emilia Clarke.
I think she's awesome, but I think you're wildly wrong. I think Natalie is a first ballot Hall of Famer.
Wow.
I'm not drinking anybody's bathwater, but I'd consider it with Natalie.
Okay, there you go. Sounds like we're definitely on different
incredible.
sides of the throne there.
By the way, Chris Bennett wants you to know The Flash would have been good had they stuck with the original movie instead of reshooting the entire movie. Chris, that's usually a sign.
Possibly, yeah. Had they not decided to stop, if that's what caused what we saw, it's crazy. Here's the other weird, like, philosophical discussion catch on bad superhero movies. Is it worse when your expectations are high and it's awful, or is it worse when it's just flat awful? That's what I was trying to work out with Madam Web. Like, Flash is bad because there's expectations that go with it. They got Michael Keaton to show up for that movie as Batman. So there's expectation level there.
Spoiler alert.
Right? Spoiler alert. I still say the worst superhero movie I may have ever seen is Batman and Robin. But part of that is the expectation level. George Clooney's Batman. Oh my God, Arnold Schwarzenegger is one of the villains. And based on the expectation level and how god awful it turned out to be, that helps to really make it horrible. So
are you more likely to watch Madam Web a second time or Batman and Robin again?
Oh, what a choice.
It's a real Sophie's choice.
It really is. For me, if it's just me, I'll sit through Madam Web again. If it's me and my daughter who has not seen Batman and Robin for the research purposes, I would sit through that with her so she can understand just how bad Batman and Robin is. But only if she wants to. I would never torture somebody with that. Just like I would tell everybody out there, do not go to the theater and see Madam Web. Don't do it. Do not do it. Unless you're like really good friends with Dakota Johnson. Really good friend.
Did you see photos of Sydney Sweeney last night on the red carpet?
No.
For the People's Choice Award?
I did not. She looked great.
Search her name in your Twitter search engine. You can thank me later.
She's fantastic. I'm telling you, there's some acting chops that just got wasted in that movie. I like all the actresses that I just feel bad for.
There's nothing about acting chops. There's some chops, but it ain't acting chops. And
did you see it? Did you actually see it?
No, but I'm telling you.
Good.
Go the pictures, the visuals
the pictures, yeah.
On the runway, red carpet, not the runway. Sorry, I'm done. Let's wrap it up. We've reached this stage where I'm confusing a runway with a red carpet. So it's probably a good time to cash our chips in.
Runways and red carpets. Make sure whatever you're doing, don't mistake all those other places for Specs, because they are the place where you can get all stocked up for your drinks, for your food, for your watch parties, whatever's coming up. Maybe you're trying to get folks together tonight to watch Texas and K-State play basketball. Get all stocked up. You may need drinks one way or the other. Here you go.
No matter what you're needing, Specs same-day delivery can save the day with our Specs app or online shopping. From world-class wines to hard-to-find spirits and craft beers to gourmet foods, delicious snacks, and spectacular sweets. It's Specs. Cheers to savings.
Real quick, Catch, do you subscribe to the theory that it's good Texas basketball has a quick turnaround for a Monday night so they can get the taste out of their mouth? Or are you in the camp that would say that was a horrific ass beating and you probably needed a little more time to recover?
No, it happens. You go on the road against a team that might win a national championship and you might get your ass kicked. It happens in basketball. I didn't think Saturday was nearly as big of a deal as Texas fans did. There was a large overreaction to that. And I keep maintaining, guys, the only thing that matters is what happens at the end of this season. So they make the tournament, have a little bit of success, make it to the second weekend. What happened at Houston won't be remembered at all. I can think of all of the times that Texas has made the Sweet 16 in my lifetime, and in none of those seasons can I remember any of the losses. I have no idea.
Yeah.
So, I'm a little bit more of a wait and see guy with this first season under Rodney Terry. Get back on the court, play another game. The Big 12 grind does not stop. I mean, ultimately, the Longhorns need to win a few more games. They need to win their home games. Tonight's a home game. Get back on the floor and handle your business.
There you have it, Texas and K-State. 8 o'clock tonight, ESPN2, so you got to be up a little bit later. All right, speaking of later, the recruiting show comes up at 4 o'clock. We are in the dead period in recruiting, but there's always stuff to talk about because recruiting never dies.
I know what the main topic is.
Yes?
Will the Longhorns land the nation's number one running back, Jordan Davison?
Ooh, okay. There you go.
We've got an update to lead the show off with.
Beautiful. Update on one of the badasses in the country. We'll get you all that at 4 o'clock. No outsiders tonight because of President's Day. The fellas have some stuff to do. Wednesday night on the Outsiders, Shane Leckler. Thursday night on the Outsiders, Justin Simmons. Simmons gets his number retired this weekend, and the Outsiders are going to talk to him on Thursday night in the 9 o'clock hour. So keep all that straight. And if you can't keep it all straight, get your notifications. Like, subscribe, get the notifications. You'll find out when all the shows are hitting. Y'all have a good rest of your Monday. We'll be back tomorrow at noon for a Tuesday edition. Until then, we are house divided. Stay safe. See ya.